And, and we are live. Hello, everybody at the What's On It Elephant and Castle Hub. Joining me today is Federico Padilla.
Yes.
I think, did I get it right?
Yes, you did it right. Thank you.
Federico, we were meant to do this yesterday, but you had a bit of a busy guest where you work.
Exactly. Yeah.
What was happening yesterday for you?
Yeah. Well, I was a little bit busy. I work at Kew Gardens, and we had this a very last notice that Prince Charles was coming to see our labs, and actually the president of an African country and some other CEOs from very important companies, they were coming to Kew, so we need to host them, of course. And it was kind of a busy day yesterday, so that's why I couldn't join you. Yeah.
Did you get to meet the prince?
I just saw him walking by.
Yeah.
I couldn't, of course, talk to him. He was not my chance, but anyway, yeah, it was nice to see. Yeah,
It's such a great experience. I know I once was very fortunate to meet Princess Diana over, I think I was 18 years old, so it's something like 32 years ago now. And it's just whether you're a monarchist or a Republican, however you sit in it, whenever you're in the presence of that kind of, I don't know, it's an experience. I really super enjoyed it. I'm sure you did too.
yeah, he was nice. He was nice.
Yeah, Federico, let's get right down to it. We met the other day, and I'm not gonna lie, I fell in love with you, brother. I think you're an amazing man, and just meeting you in that brief little bit of time, I was like, I really want to talk to you, so that the people in Southwark who watch this can get to know you a little bit better and what you do, and because when you look at someone like yourself who's in an academic field of pharmaceuticals and working at Kew, this most prestigious book, Botanical Garden, on the planet, it's quite intimidating. But also, because smart people scare me because I'm not that smart, I guess. But we gelled right away when we kind of shared our stories about being young athletes. So maybe if you could just kind of give people a little bit of a rundown of who you are, what you do now, and then we'll go into the to Federico, the young guy.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, as you said, I'm Federico Padilla. I was born in Colombia. I'm currently working in Kew Gardens as a researcher. I have a PhD in natural product chemistry, and yeah, most of my life I was like working. I was actually more focused on sports than academics or anything else. And then eventually I was moving out more to the academic field. But I really believe that a big part of my personality and where I am now, what I have achieved, is due to sports, definitely. So yeah, I just came to London 2 years ago. I got this job offer when I finished my PhD to come to Kew, and I decided, of course, to take it, and here I am. Yeah, meeting Prince Charles.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a beautiful story. I too, it was funny because I was talking about this the other day on the news about how, especially young men around the ages of 11 to 13 are very highly influenced with even a moderate to vigorous physical activity, and how it helps with mental well-being. There's some wonderful studies out there that if anybody's interested, they can get in touch with. But it's actually like growing up, it was always, hey, go out and get some fresh air. And then we would play until, the sun went down, and probably later and get in trouble from our parents from actually playing outside for so long. But there's actually studies now that show that physical exertion when you're younger helps with cognitive development and an increase in academic performance. And I suppose you are a perfect example of someone who's achieved high academics, but it's because I can't say it's because, but you attribute a lot to being involved in athletics from an early age.
Yes, definitely. I think that shaped a little bit. Yes.
So what was the young athletic Federico? How did you get involved in athletics?
Yeah, well, I would say that I still really don't know how I became, like, I was so interested from an early age on athletics. I remember when I was 7, when I was 6, I was just competing in every competition I could. I was enrolling myself in competitions, and I was I always liked. I don't really know why, but the key point, let's say, my athletic career was when I was 12, and then a Cuban coach came to my city in Colombia, Tunja, And then he was a high level, at least national level coach. And then he started coaching me from an early age. So since I was 12, I was kind of training every day. And the thing is, when you're so young, he not only train your body, but also shape your personality and how you must think in face of a competition or many other aspects. So that was how I started, let's say. Yeah.
Right. And what was it about athletics? How, like, when did you start to feel that kind of that fire in the belly, you know, when you actually really like, oh, I want to go running, rather than it kind of just being something that you're kind of being guided towards?
No, that's really, really from a young age. I remember the first memory I have that I was really interested in running was this one. I was living in Tunja, a small city in the Andes of Colombia. And my father, he bought an apartment in Bogota, the capital. So we went there for a weekend, new place and everything. And then I remember that I asked my father some money to buy some candies in the close by store and market. And then when I was going there, and I remember I was like 7, and I remember when I was going there, I saw a bunch of kids just queuing on a table. And I was asking, why are you doing here? What are you doing here? I remember he gave me 500 pesos, like a coin, basically used to buy a candy. And I was asking them, what are you doing here? And they would tell me, no, we are registering ourselves for a competition that is going to happen in the afternoon. So we have to do a whole lap to the building. That was the competition. And I was, oh, I want to do it. And then I with money that I was supposed to buy candies, I had to pay description fee. I didn't buy any candy, but I was registered to the competition. Then I went to the competition, and of course, eventually I won the competition, and I was super excited. But we need to go back to my hometown, Tunja, and it was late at night, so I could never actually claim the prize. I won a prize. I still don't know after 30 years. I don't know what was the prize. But I think that first experience, the prize that I feel it gave me was interesting, get me interested in the field, and then I would just start in training. And when I was 12, I was just like full time doing it every day, basically. Yeah.
I think, you know, my experience, because you were a 400 and 800 meters, right? Which I call, like, you know, they're to me the hardest of any athletic running competition, because it's, you know, 400 is a sprint and 800 nowadays is darn near a sprint. Exactly. And you know, it'll burst your lungs, your legs will fall off. I mean, I tried it. I was doing it when I was like 16 or something like that, and I wasn't training for it. I was doing it because there was no one to run that in an event, and I was doing say something else, and they were like, "Hey, Rothwell, go run the 400 meter," and I'd be like, "Yeah, okay." But what, like, those events hurt, Federico. Like they hurt. Yeah. So like what was it about it? Like, I mean, some people would think that it's a bit sadistic to kind of go into those events, but what was it about those events that really got you?
Well, initially I started running the 100 meters. So everyone wanted to be a sprinter. I wanted to do the 100, but then this Cuban coach, he realized that I wasn't that fast at the start. I was better at holding the speed. So he was like, actually, let's move to 200 and 400. Then for some years, I was doing 200 and 400. Then I wasn't that fast for 200. So let's move to 400 and 800. And then eventually, my best results were in the 800, actually, and not in the 400. So I was kind of, that was the reason why, basically, I was trying to fit where I was good at.
Yeah.
It was
How good were you at it?
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. I think I mentioned, I was national champion in Colombia in all the age groups when I was from under 17, under 20, under 23, and then as an adult athlete. I was national champion in 400 and 800 meters. I set 3 national records in Colombia in the 400, in the 800 meters mostly, and 4x4 relay. I had the opportunity of representing my country in several South American championships and in a world championship in 2003, Canada, where I was world semi-finalist. So I was pretty excited about it. That was one of the key achievements of my athletic career. Yeah.
I do remember you talking about a gentleman named Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
Tell us how you came across him.
Yeah, well, basically, we're both the same age, and we were both competing in the World Youth Championships in 2003 in Sherbrooke, in Canada. So it's an interesting story because he was back then he was not a 100-meter runner. He was actually a 400-meter runner and 200-meter runner, and I was running 400 and 800. So I was just checking the people I was supposed to run with in the 400, the people in my heat. And then I back then I had like 49 or 50 seconds, and I was checking the people, and they were like 48, 50, 51. Everyone was there. And then I saw this guy from Jamaica named Usain Bolt running 45 with 17. And there's going to be a mistake there. There's definitely a mistake. There's no way how can somebody with 17 run 45 seconds, which is just an adult time. Then I was just keeping an eye on this guy, and I saw him run the 200. He was like very tall, very skinny back then. And then he was running 200, very effortless, super easy. And he was running 20 seconds, 21 seconds. And that's incredible. I was like, that's incredible. How can you run 20.8 just by stopping, like really jogging the last 50 meters? But of course, he was Usain Bolt, and he had like this natural talent, and everyone knows him. Eventually, he didn't run the 400. He just ran the 200. He won the 200. So he didn't have to run the 400 anymore because he was already world champion. And I ran the 800. I made it to the semifinal. I didn't make it to the final, but still I ran a national record in Colombia. So I didn't run the 400. I was too tired. It was too many races in top, so I didn't do it. Yeah.
That's quite incredible. I love hearing stories about Usain Bolt because, like you say, he is a natural phenomena. Like people talk about, how can I train to become like Usain Bolt? Really, it's sit around and eat McDonald's, right?
Basically, you don't train; you're born like that.
yeah. I think so. I think that is the thing, though, Federico, is people like there are people with just these natural physical, mental abilities that set them apart from other people who want to get really good, but they train really hard. And I think that this is the thing that, again, we can kind of go into is, what was your experience, moving away from home to pursue your ambitions to become a track athlete, but also to go to school. Let's go through that, and let's hear some of the things that you have to say about some of the things that you learned about resiliency and toughness, and go from there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Before I go there, I have definitely to mention some of my early age days when I was in Colombia, like between 14 and 17. Because as I mentioned before, when I was 12, I started training with this Cuban guy who was he actually made it himself to the Olympics that was in 2018 back then. And then he got this job offer in Colombia. He went there and he started coaching a bunch of kids basically to try to get ahead, to achieve the dreams. So I started training 12. When I was about 15 is when I won my first national championships, and I was very excited about it. It was a huge milestone in my career. But then I started developing this urgency of winning. I always wanted more, and nothing was like the sky was the limit. That's what people were saying back then. And then, of course, one of the best countries where you can go to run is the US. So, and I saw from my personal experience, Colombia didn't have many history in athletics. Back then, there was only one a medal in the Olympics, one Olympic medal for the whole country, the whole history of the country. And that medal was won by Jimena Restrepo, a 400-meter runner. And she won the medal in the 400 meters in 1992 in Barcelona. And she won that medal when she was studying in the US. So she was like this role model that we all wanted to follow. So we all wanted to go to the US and eventually go to the Olympics and, of course, win a medal. So we were training for that, and we knew that it was hard and everything, but we were taught back then, or I was taught that you have to be resilient, that you have to work hard. I remember actually back then, the days where I was training, and I think it was too hard for a 15-year-old guy. I remember doing repetition of 200s at maximum speeds, and I remember throwing up after repetitions. But my coach was so hard, so strong, telling me that you have to just put yourself together and go for the next one.
Mhm.
Then next one throwing up, just lying on the ground, and then he was time. Next one, next one, next one. And I think I don't blame him today, but I say that most of he was pushing too hard kids basically because he wanted to have some recognition as a coach, not really thinking like in the long term. Am I coaching this guy to really become an Olympic medalist when he turns 20, 25? Or do I want results now because I'm being assessed by my results now? And I think that was likely the case. But anyway, I was training very hard. And when I was 17, I went to this world championship. And when I came back, I got a letter from Harvard University. And I was super excited because we all know that Harvard University is one of the best universities in the world. And they were offering me a scholarship. And I was, wow, I need to go there. But back then, I didn't speak English. I didn't have any of those English tests like SAT test, GRE, or any of those. And I couldn't take the opportunity. They needed somebody just there now. But that is still like the idea of making it to the US just stay in my head. And I was like, well, back then I hadn't finished the high school. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna finish high school. I'm gonna learn English. I'm going to take all the tests and I'm going to the US. Eventually, of course, I didn't go to Harvard, but then I was constantly applying to scholarship. I was sending hundreds of emails every day to all universities so I could get accepted in one of them. Mm-hmm. Then eventually one of those universities in Florida, they accepted me. It was a small university in a city named Lake Wales between Orlando and Miami. And Warner University was the name. And then I was super excited. That was the dream of my life. I was going to the US and I was getting an education from a really high level university. And I was going to the Olympics. That was what it was in my mind. Before going to the US, things didn't really follow that much. I applied for the visa. I got the visa. Of course, back then I had the TOEFL test, the proficiency English tests, and all the other necessary tests that I had to take. And when I arrived to the US, I was just shocked by the fact that first, it was not a top level university. It was actually a very low level university, small college in Florida, Christian college, a very small town. There was no track to train. And what it was more difficult was the fact that I didn't have a full scholarship. They were paying my tuition fees, but I had to find money for living and money for eating and everything else, of course. So that was troubles because when I went there, I was going with $500 in my pocket. And that's how I survived for nearly a year or something. So of course, I didn't have a visa that allowed me to work outside campus. So I couldn't work outside campus. Sometimes, the US, I was in need. I managed to work like in construction some weekends or as a waiter whenever I could, but that was not a formal or like a constant job. I was competing every weekend and I was training and studying every day. So this first was like a the cultural shock, of course. I was very young. The first time I left my country, I left my family, my friends, to embark in this new adventure and trying to get ahead. It was not that easy. Then I realized that I was really struggling. At some point, I was really struggling because I didn't have a place to sleep. Basically, I was just talking to friends and sleeping in my friends' houses, like in a coach. I used to live for many months in a coach of a friend. And I got a point where I was literally stealing food in the university. I had nothing to eat. I have nothing to eat every day. So I was just going to the university cafeteria and I was just cooking a bunch of rice or trying to sneak in whenever I could. And asking friends to bring me food or just get whatever I could when they were not looking at me. So I was really feeling miserable, to be honest, because I never had to do that in my country. And that's something from American culture, that is the fact that sometimes, I cannot generalize, of course, but some people, they think that everything in the world is the US and everyone coming from any other country should be very proud or should be very grateful just for the fact of being in the US. And that's not the case. I was literally having a worse life in the US than what I was having in my own home country. But I still had the idea that you have to work hard to get ahead. I was not giving up. I mean, not everything in life is going to be easy. Yes, I can have troubles today, but I know that's not going to be forever. So I can endure that. I was challenging. I knew it was a challenge, and I wanted to take it because I had a dream of running. And it started, of course. But the problem is that after running for some months, my performance was dropping. I was not eating properly, and I was not sleeping properly. And my performance was dropping, but I didn't find any empathy from any of my coaches from a university. And actually, one of the coaches, the one who took me there, was a Colombian coach. But mindset is a bit different. It's more like you have to, basically, you're on your own, and you have to prove how valuable you are by enduring all sorts of bad things that can happen in your life. And anyway, so yeah, so eventually, after several months of running, of decreasing my performance, I was still managing to go to nationals there, to make All-American teams, but I was not in my top shape, and I was feeling that I was not going anywhere. So I eventually, after about a year, I decided that that was not actually what I wanted for my life. I went there with a dream, and I was not achieving that dream because first I wanted to go to a high-level university. That was not a university where I was gonna get a good education back then, or at least compared to the one I got in Colombia. And then after that in Brazil and Germany. And then I was definitely not improving in my athletics performance, and I wasn't gonna do it there because you see the people running for that university, and there is not any world level athlete. There is anyone going to the Olympics from there. There is not even an NCAA level athlete because it's not even an NCAA level university. So I think that was mostly the experience that I got when I was in the US. I think it was, now looking in retrospective, I think it was a bit hard for an 18-year-old kid, but I think it was good at the same time because it helped me value many things. Like, for example, having a place to sleep. I knew that I had to work hard to just to get food in my plate. I didn't have to do that when I was in Colombia, and I think it was good. And sometimes just feeling that you're on your own helps you kind of shake yourself and say, okay, I'm on my own. I have to move if I want to achieve something in my life. So basically, I decided to go back to Colombia. I remember it was a funny day or not that funny actually. I was finishing competing. I finished competing the nationals in California, and my plane ticket was going to Orlando, and I was going from Orlando to Miami to take the flight from Miami to Bogota. I had no money at all, but I managed with last $10 that I had. I managed to book a bus from Orlando to the Miami airport. So it was great. I went to the airport in Orlando. I took the bus and I went to Miami airport. It's great that this bus, I remember thinking, it's great that the bus is going to the airport, because if it was not, there was no way I could get to the airport if it was, for example, going to the city center or anything like that. So I remember arriving in Miami airport, like it was, I don't remember the day exactly, but it was, let's say, a Sunday, and it was 6 p.m. My flight was going from Miami to Bogota the next day at 6 p.m. So I was supposed to be 24 hours in the airport. And then, well, I just arrived there. I went to sleep on the floor because there was no other way. And I was just constantly looking at my watch. Okay, I need to wait until 4 p.m. so I can do the check-in and go to the plane and go home. But the time was passing really slow and I had nothing to eat the whole day. Then when I eventually 3 p.m., 4 p.m., I went to do the check-in, and I remember the people working the airline was telling me, look, the flight is overbooked. So we might not be able to send you on this flight to Colombia. You're gonna have to wait here for another 24 hours. And that means another 24 hours of no eating and another 24 hours of sleeping on the floor in the airport. And I said, and they were saying, is there any way you can stay here? Because we see in your visa that you live here in the US. Is there any way you can go stay here and then travel the next day to Colombia? And I went, no, there is absolutely no way. I have nothing. And then I managed to get into that flight. And they were actually offering me very good deals. Like, yeah, you stay another day here, we can give you a return ticket anywhere else you want in the world, like international flight, anywhere else you want. And I was thinking, this is a really good deal, but I just can't do anything else here. So basically, I just went to Colombia, and when I was there, I realized that no, I can't go back.
No.
And I didn't go back. Yeah, I didn't go back, and I don't regret at all. It's been more than 10 years, and I don't regret at all, because staying there was meant to me giving up my dreams anyway, and just focusing on the short-term plans, which was getting an education from the U.S. university, and not achieving what I wanted. So I got a lot of resistance with the coach when I told her that I didn't want to go to the U.S. anymore. People, of course, didn't like me that much because of that, and they were telling me that this is an opportunity you get once in a life, and as a Colombian from a developing nation, you don't have these opportunities twice. You have the opportunity of being in the US, and you are not going to be able again to go to study or to work in any other country or to get ahead. You're going to basically be another unemployed in your country and achieve nothing, or get a bad education or whatever. Of course, I didn't believe that. When I went to Colombia, I say, okay, I started running again, training again. My performance immediately increased. Of course, I think that was not only because of, I think there was, of course, like a psychological part there that I needed to fix, and I just fixed it when I went to Colombia, because I was feeling better. When I was in the US, I was constantly living with anxiety. Every day I was waking up and I was with anxiety because I didn't know, what am I going to eat today? I didn't have a health insurance and I couldn't afford one. And I remember thinking, like, if something happened to me, how am I going to pay for the hospital bills? I don't have anything. I remember experiencing racism in the US as a Colombian. People asking me uncomfortable questions, even in the airport. The first day when I arrived in the US, full of dreams, after working hard to get there in terms of learning English, in terms of taking all these tests, the first question the officer asked me was, when he saw my passport, was like, oh, so you're Colombian? And I said, yes. And he said, are you bringing any drugs? And I was shocked. I was, what? Do you mean that all Colombians are drug dealers, or what is that type of questions that you're asking an 18-year-old guy? Anyway, that's some of the things that we have to face in the world as Colombians anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if you want to mention.
No, it's I feel like I should say something now, because I want to go back to the, you getting kind of a half scholarship, the tuition paid at Florida at a university there. Yeah. And I'm wondering about, and then so they bring you in. I'm wondering about the mindset of the coaches and the teachers to think, okay, let's bring all these people in from other places and give them, well, not give them, but supply an education, but actually not really having much interest in you as a person. Yeah. You're more of a commodity of something that is like, and I mean, and that's I'm trying to figure out how the business model works for them. Because literally that's what it is right now. Like all colleges in the States, they're businesses, they're there to make money. And it feels like there was just no emphasis put on your well-being at all. And it's really kind of shocking, to think that places of higher learning, players of nurturing, the youth to become, contributing members of society, are really just treating people as, a commodity. And but I don't know, Federico, it's a system
Yeah.
that we can't really change. It's a system that we have to take stuff from, and the resilience, I suppose, that you learned in that time there. Like you said, you learned a lot, didn't you? But what,
Yeah.
do you think that people who succeed to the level that you're succeeding at now need to go through something like that when they're younger?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. It's not necessary, and it's actually bad in many ways, because that has an impact on your psychologics, and it's a long-lasting impact from an experience that you live on your teenage years, and that's going to be there forever, to the level that today I still remember, and I still sometimes I feel the anxiety that I feel when I was there, and it's been more than 10 years, and I still see myself like going through difficulties, and I can cope. I feel the same thing that I was feeling when I was there, and it's definitely unnecessary. And the thing is, what you mentioned, some people, they more interested in gaining instead of giving, at least in my experience in the US. So they want to see you as a commodity, because I want to get results from a good athlete, so he can call the attention of any other potential athletes to come join our team. And I get recognition as a coach. If I have a national champion in my university, then I will be regarded as a good coach. And many other things, but they don't really care about your needs. They don't care. They don't care about what you're eating. You need to just to deliver, and you should be grateful for that, for the opportunity of being there, of being miserable, basically. I remember even once I was in the cafeteria. I had this big problem with food, and I was like, okay, I need to fix it. And I realized that every day after lunch, there were many foods. There was many food that it was just being thrown away. So because nobody was eating, of course. And then I went to the back of the cafeteria, and I saw the manager of the cafeteria. She was throwing the food away, and I told her, I looked at her, and I told her, like, hey, what do you think? I had an idea. What do you think if you let me work here, doing whatever you want me to do, and instead of throwing all that food, you just give me a little bit, so I can have a food security for every day. Just at least I know that I have something to eat.
Yeah.
And you know what she told me?
What?
She said, look, the days that people work for food were past many generations ago. If you don't have anything to eat, that's your problem.
Wow. And
I was 18.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was nothing I could say about it. You don't work for food anymore. And then I was, then they just give me a job. No, there's no jobs in the uni. Everything is booked. Yeah. Okay, so I'm in the same place, basically. I just can't win. Yeah.
It's heartbreaking to think of a young man, like you're 17, 18 years old, having to go through it. But actually, it hurts. And I'm so glad that you said that. We always hear this all the time from guys my age, like coaching other, I went through this, and I had calluses, and I used to bleed, doing push-ups and chin-ups, and this whole idea of like pull yourself up from the bootstraps, and you have to go through this stuff to become, the man that you can become. And I'm so glad that you said that you don't, because really you don't. We do not need to put people through these experiences so that they can achieve some kind of higher level of either athleticism or academia. This whole idea, we can build resiliency in a tender way. We can build it with compassion. We can build it with self-awareness, with self-reflection. We don't, like even, and I think we talked about it the other day, when, when you're telling an 8-year-old who might hurt themselves playing football, and you say there's no crying in football, it's actually abuse to that child, because the child has an enlarged amygdala. They're designed to cry, and we're telling them not to cry. So they're automatically, and as you said, you can carry it into future, thinking to yourself, oh, I'm hurting right now, I want to cry, but you're told that you're not to cry because it's not what real men do. And these are things that, again, like they're trauma-based responses that are natural for us, and we're trying to deny it and box it all up in here and say, I'll be okay. And like I say, I'm really glad that you said that we don't need to go through that, because I think this is the thing that we need to try to teach to people, to coaches and parents nowadays, is that there's a different way of being able to achieve things without having to be so hard on one another.
Exactly.
You know, there, yeah.
And I think that applies for everything in life. I think when I see that, I kind of I see it as when kids are misbehaving back in 50 years ago, or even in some families today, when kids misbehave, parents, they used to be very strong with the kids, and they actually sometimes there's physical abuse to the kids. They beat them because you're misbehaving. So you need to take, you need to be corrected in a physical way so you know how you have to behave in the future. Science says today that that's not true, and the same things apply for athletics. You need to go and endure the most difficult times, and you have to be abused, so now you're tough. That's not true. You learn more by love, and you develop your skills better by loving what you do than by being abused, basically. And that's the only way I think we can move forward.
Yeah. I think it's that word abuse. I think people think of being tough on someone, saying, you know, go sprint another 200, go sprint another 200. They think that they're doing, you know, like themselves a favor by developing an athlete. But you haven't even developed as a grown person, and you're putting your muscles in your lungs through that kind of punishment when it's just it doesn't make any sense. But it's this whole thing of you have to go through this wall, you know, to achieve what you're trying to achieve. So I'm I'm glad that you said that science is proving that it isn't. And you said that love is the thing that people are in the athletic world, in the sporting world. Like people are like, don't talk to me about love. It's wishy-washy and fluffy. But I think, again, we're talking about what is the definition of these words. And I think if we can work on that with people, you know, so that's funny. I'm going to ask you, what is your definition of love?
Compassion, empathy, showing interest, genuine interest in the other person. I think one of the big problems with this, interiorizing this abuse as a good thing, as the only way to move forward, is that you kind of get used to punishment. And you learn from an early age that the only way to achieve things is to go to punishment. So actually there are studies in which they show that people who interiorize that type of punishment or abuse, they are more prone to get into abusive relationships in the future. Because they say, yeah, my partner is beating me, but that's because he loves me. And that's a consequence because of how you were raised, for example. How was your personality shaped when you were a kid? And that sports could play a role in there. Who knows?
Let's move on a little bit, because we're running out of time. We've only got 8 minutes left. Wow, we could keep talking. I want to talk about how you got to where you are now. Like you're working at you know, the most coveted botanic gardens on the planet. Federico, how did you end up where you are working with, and tell us what you do?
Okay, sure. I'll try to summarize that. After I retired from athletics due to an injury, it was a stress injury of many years of training, overtraining, basically. Many years of overtraining, just trying to give immediate results. They just end up in an injury, of stress injury. I couldn't run anymore when I was 23, 24. So, but I had something that I learned from athletics, and it was that every day you wake up and you go to do what you love. And it's not even, and you do it because you love it, because it's what you like. It's being there for you, and you make friends there, and it's nice. It's a good environment as well. So I got this discipline that every day I was constantly thinking about athletics. My whole day was athletics. I was not really interested in studying, but I always liked science. I was born in the countryside next to a forest in Colombia, and I really liked that. So when I retired from athletics, I knew that I had to change a little bit my priorities, and that I could use the skills that I learned, the good skills that I learned in athletics, and put them into academia, which is with science, which is what I like it. So the same way that I was every day just constantly studying about athletics, watching competitions online, checking results, talking to people, everything was athletics. Now I wanted to change that into academia, and then I decided to to give it a try, and then I started looking for scholarships. I eventually got a scholarship after many tries. I got a scholarship to do a master's in Brazil in pharmaceutical sciences. And this is a very interesting story that before applying to Brazil, I needed to learn Portuguese. I remember I sent an email to my supervisor there, and he said, yeah, you can come here. We give you a scholarship, but you need to learn Portuguese and you need to study for the admission test. And these are the topics of the admission test. And I said, okay. I didn't do anything else. I said, perfect. And then for 1 year, I set myself the goal that for 1 year, I was going to study every day Portuguese, and I was going to study every day chemistry for the admission test for 1 year. So there was 1 year, 265 days in which I didn't stop any single day studying Portuguese and chemistry. And then after a year, I took a test and I passed and I learned Portuguese. So I could go there. And I think that's because of athletics. Something that you do every day is training, where I could do the training, but in another field. And I did the same training, and I eventually got there. And then when I was there, I did the master. Then I got a scholarship to go to Germany and do a PhD. So the half in Brazil, the other part in Germany. And when I finished my PhD, I got a prize for the best doctoral thesis in the university. And I think that opened my doors a little bit more. And I got this job offer here in Kew Gardens. I applied and I got it. So that's how I came here. Yeah, basically.
What do you do at Kew Gardens?
I'm a researcher. I studied plant chemistry. So we partner with different companies, and we help them develop products based on plants, cosmetic products, and we're making sure there are sustainable source products. These products are made with the right species that is sustainably harvested and has the right chemistry, would actually improve your hair, for example, or any other cosmetic purposes. So that's basically what I'm doing. It's applied research, applied science. Yeah.
We live in a city, a big, huge metropolis where, London's so great because we do have some green spaces. I know my business partner, who they thrive around plant and nature because of the energy and the flow. And as a scientist, I know they come from a kind of a spiritual basis, but as a scientist, how important is nature in our lives now when we sit here and, like, I live in Soho, where I live.
Yeah.
I have a couple plants in my place, but what is our relationship with plants? I'm interested from a scientist point of view, how important is it as humans?
Plants, and let's say biodiversity in general, is the most important for our lives, because literally our life depends on plants and biodiversity. For example, if we talk about medicines, about 60% of medicines to treat many different diseases they were derived from natural products, say the bacteria, microorganisms, any other microorganisms or plants, or inspired by nature and then developed in the lab. Medicines, what you eat is biodiversity. The clothes you're wearing. So we depend, basically. Our life depends on biodiversity much more than what we think. The oxygen we're breathing is because plants are doing the photosynthesis. They regulate the environment, for example. So if there were no plants, then there would be a completely imbalance in the temperatures. Maybe we couldn't be here. And it's delicate. It's very delicate network that you just break a small part and everything else collapses. So that's why it's so important, for example, now climate change or biodiversity loss, which is the main priority of Kew Gardens, to stop biodiversity loss. So, yeah.
Like when I sit back and you just think about the evolution of the human species and how, like you say, it was an interdependent relationship where we were hunter gatherers and we would, but now I go down to Tesco's and I get my food and I've got 3 plants in my place and I just give them a little squirt of water. But we've just been, as humans, we've become so disconnected with nature. Just because we've only got a couple of minutes left, what kind of tips would you say, for a guy like me, living in Soho, just to kind of figure out about how to connect back to nature, on a I don't want to say a spiritual level, but on some kind of level of appreciation to understand that we are all in this one ecosystem?
Come to Kew Gardens. You will love it. I think
I missed the trip the other day. I'm so
yeah,
upset.
yeah. That's that's one of the things you can do actually. Every time you have the chance of going outdoors, of going to nature, you will see that it actually changed even your mood when you were there, and that has scientific explanations. Um, Try to be more green in everything you eat, in everything you do. Try to let's make your actions have the less impact possible on the planet. Let's recycle. Let's you know let's do everything we can. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Federico. I know I could have probably talked to you for another 45 minutes.
Okay.
I was so enthralled in the athletic side of things that we didn't really talk about the plant stuff, but I'm sure we'll get you on again one day and we'll talk. So thank you so much for joining me, man, and be well. And thanks everybody at the Elephant and Castle Community Hub for joining us today. Next week, we got a great guest too, but also I'll be here on Thursday at 11 a.m. for another Tough Through Tender workshop. We'll see you all then. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.